So we're going to go ahead and kick off. Subject today, this is an intro to lunar planetary imaging. I'm not going to get into processing and all that stuff. There's some other people who are doing presentations on that. So I'm going to kind of run through the gamut of what you need to get started, what the advantages are, and what are the kind of results that you can get. Right? And the focus here is the one-shot color camera. So that was the introduction. We'll look a little bit at gear, atmospheric considerations, weather, seeing how that impacts things, choosing your, setting your kit up so you can get started on this, and how to get results pretty much right out of the gate if you got yourself configured properly. Has anybody here tried this stuff before? Anybody know lunar planetary? Okay, got a couple. All right, so then versus now. What you see up here are some of the finest planetary images done by the greatest observatories in the world during the 20th century. Okay, the problem is they got to contend with atmosphere a lot more than we do, so they were using film plates. People nowadays routinely get much better results in their backyard with much smaller equipment. That shot right down on the right-hand side was taken with a C11 Schmidt Cassegrain. Those other ones were taken by 2 or 3 or 4 meter telescopes. So the results kind of speak for themselves, and you've expressed an interest in this, so let's take a look at what some of the benefits are. First off, you can do lunar planetary imaging pretty much anywhere. Backyard's perfect, glorious. Things still give you boot up garbage. There are no requirements for dark site conditions. In fact, your backyard's ideal because you got power in the bathroom right next door. You can't beat that, right? All right, entry level can be very modest, the investment. I always counsel, when you start this, use the telescope you got. Don't go out and buy something special to do this. Take whatever you got, plug your camera in there and give it a go. And there is no telescope too small, well, almost no telescope too small, to do some type of effective lunar planetary imaging. You can buy webcams for under $100. I don't recommend that because you got to convert them. They're a big pain in the neck. You got dedicated imagers now. Mead has them, Orion has them, they're out there, and they can be had for under $200 and give very good results. And for not much more than those mainstream consumer cameras, you can get you a really first-rate lunar planetary camera from ZVO or Point Grey or Imaging Source for just $100, maybe $200 more, and you'll get, and they work much better than most of the other cameras that are being sold at low levels. Okay. Another advantage, bright, easily located targets. No faint and fuzzies here. It is easy to find Jupiter, Saturn, and the Moon. They're right there along the ecliptic, and you don't have to go to a dark site to get to them. They are also essentially unaffected by light pollution. They're a lot more affected by seeing conditions. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. You can find even the most difficult planetary targets from your backyard. There's a fairly general learning curve associated with lunar planetary imaging. Plug in an off-the-shelf unit, use the software according to the directions, and you can turn out decent results in fairly short order. One of my favorite targets, and one of the ones that I like to recommend to people getting started, is the Moon. The Moon's huge. It's got tons of detail. Okay, it's actually a little trickier to shoot than you might think because you have a very high dynamic range target there, especially with images right along the terminator. You go from the whitest white to the blackest black. Okay, but it's a great target to practice on, and you get results pretty quickly that way. Okay, images on this page came from one on the right is an 8-inch Newtonian, and again C11 over on the left-hand side. And those are the levels of detail that I can get shooting from my backyard observatory with my house blocking off the north immediately beside me. My neighbors block off the south. I've got a big swath in the middle, and the conditions there are still good enough to allow me to get decent results, particularly with modern high-speed cameras, which is another reason I recommend the somewhat higher-end camera. I don't want to scare anybody off by using that term, but the cameras in the $250 to $350 range, as opposed to the less expensive cameras that give you much better frame rates. We'll talk about that a bit in a minute. Stacking and processing can be done for essentially free. There's no maximum DL, pixel insight, or anything like that that you have to go and drop $75, $100, $600 on to get it done. The basic software for acquisition comes with your cameras invariably on disk, and for the initial processing, the stacking, The most popular program out there is called Auto Stacker 2, AS2. It's freeware. Reach Stacks 6 is freeware. Stack 2, which is a dying breed, I'm afraid, which is unfortunate. It's a great lunar stacking program, is freeware. So you don't have to spend anything to stack images, and even in post-processing, tools like GIMP 2 are getting sophisticated enough to give you very, very good renditions. And if you've got anything like Photoshop, like once it came with your camera, with a Canon camera or something along those lines, there's tools there that will help you out too. Of course, you can, just like any part of this hobby, you can spend as much as you want. You want to get Photoshop 6, CS6, go for it. There's a lot of great features in there. Okay. Why do it? The stuff in our solar system is incredibly cool. There's a lot of detail there. Whether it's Saturn, the Moon, or Jupiter, there's change to be seen there. You don't get a lot of change in DSOs. They've been pretty much like that for millions of years, and they always will be as far as we're concerned, okay? But you got dynamic objects here in the solar system, particularly Jupiter. I'm a Jupiter fanatic, and I love to get out there. I love Jupiter season. But there's a lot to be seen with all the other objects in the solar system. Now, one-shot color or mono with RGB filters. So you got two main choices here. You can choose one-shot color, which we're going to mostly talk about today, that will do it all for you without additional gear, or you can go the monocam with filter wrap. They both have their advantages and they both have their disadvantages. With the one-shot color camera, basically the chip on there has a color fire matrix overlaid on top of the pixel, so you get the traditional red, green, blue Bayer pattern where it's cheated toward the green. Okay? The advantage to this, the immediate advantage to this, is you don't have a bunch of filters you have to fidget with. Okay? When you shoot with a one-shot color camera, you always get something to work with. Now, monocams have their own advantages. Okay? They are somewhat more sensitive, although with the newer generation of one-shot color cameras coming out now, that gap is really, really closed. And the advantage that monocams have isn't as significant as it used to be. The big advantage of monocams is you can use different types of filters with them. Not just the color LRGB filters, but methane filters and other types of filters that give you special effects, and they can be beneficial. This shot is a fairly typical RGB. It's actually an RGB and an IR filter. And I ended up getting a slightly strange color on Jupiter with this. But when you look up in the belts up in here, you can see there's a ton of detail, very sensitive detail that was picked up that you might not have gotten with another imaging technique. So, big pros and cons. One-shot color, lower investment, less gear. There's an easier learning curve to it because you don't have to stack anything, you don't have to match colors, you don't have to correct for it. It's more weather tolerant. As I said just a minute ago, when you shoot with one-shot color, you always get something. A typical imaging run over Jupiter, for instance, will run you about 3 minutes. When you shoot one-shot color, it's all one-shot color. You got all the colors for that 3 minutes. If you have to go to a mono camera, you've got quickly changing conditions where you'll get brief periods of clarity and really nasty, scene caused by air movement. You might not get a good red channel or a good blue channel or a good green channel, and that's going to impact your final product. With one-shot color, you can always bring something back with you. On the con side, OSC cameras are very marginally, slightly less sensitive, and they can't use specialty filters. Okay, now on mono side, pros, you got no Bayer array, it's a bit more sensitive. You're able to use a whole range of filters, and some of them are really cool and give you great effects. For an experienced imager, they just give you more flexibility, but they are slightly more constrained by weather conditions. They are more significant, they're more significantly expensive, got filter wheels, filters, and all that good stuff, and there's a steeper learning curve involved in it. So one-shot color is a great gateway to lunar and planetary imaging. So let's assume now we're going to go forward, we're going to give us our OSC camera, so we're going to look at some of the gear. Just flip through this briefly. Everybody here probably has some kind of gear they're working with. If you want to talk about specifics of it, I am around all weekend, and I'll talk your ear off about this stuff, okay? So if you have any questions, we can continue this conversation all weekend as far as I'm concerned. But we're going to hit these topics over here on the right just briefly. That image on the left-hand side, that was my original observatory, which was a little breezy. but I got good results sitting in my backyard. So optical tubes, use what you got. Start with that. High focal ratios are good for this type of imaging. Typically, we're looking at a really long focal lengths when we shoot. Okay. Aperture is a great thing, but it's not the only thing. And you'll find that under some weather conditions, small refractors and SCTs actually seem to pull in better results than bigger apertures do. And I've demonstrated this to myself countless times. There are some nights when I would take an 11-inch out, but I come back with good results from a 4 to 6-inch refractor. Something usable. Okay. Good focusers. I will put Staunton back one. A powered focuser with all the whistles and bells on it that will allow you to repeat things, repeat your settings is a really good and useful thing. Okay, fidgeting with a focuser, when you're going back and forth trying to get fine focus on a planet, that will eat you up after a while. It's doable, and I do it with my refractors. I don't do it with my Schmidt cast telescope stuff. Those are all powered. Mounts, any kind of tracking mount, doesn't make much difference. Now, you don't have to have a tracking mount. There's folks out there taking perfectly good images with DOBs, for instance, particularly if they've got some type of tracking capability on it. The problem with the DOB, of course, is that you get rotation in the images, so you're going to have to derotate those images before you stack them. If you own a DOB and you want to give it a try, don't let that stop you. Just know that you're going to have another step in your processing when you do that. I recommend any of the inexpensive gems. Atlases, C-gems, any of those will be more than capable of keeping your target in the field of view long enough for you to acquire the data that you need to make a finished product. Color cameras, okay, let's get into it. Webcams. You know what, there's just really no advantage in them anymore. They were a great start, people did some good work with them, but the parade's kind of passed that one by. Unless you were on an extremely limited budget or you're an adventurer and you like to fiddle with things, I'd kind of skip this step. Okay, now the mass market cameras are another question. Celestron makes a number of good cameras. In fact, they just went into, just last year, they cut a deal with Imaging Source to make a whole new line of one-shot color cameras that are very, very good. They're based on the Sony 618 chip, and surprise, surprise, they act just like Imaging Source cameras. Except I think they're a little more expensive, which is odd to me. But very good products. Orion's got some decent ones. I've had some hit or miss luck with their Starship Planetary imagers in the past. I kind of moved up from them fairly quickly. But this is not a bad way to go in if you don't want to spend $300 or $400. This is a $150 to $200 proposition, so it's less expensive. And then you got the dedicated Lunar Planetary imagers. Okay, these are really top of the line for what we do as amateurs in this business, and they will give you screaming fast frame rates now. The new USB 3 models can download the data to any laptop that is fast enough to eat it and digest it. Excuse me. And those frame rates are very, very important under lots and lots of conditions. Because one of the advantages that you got with these cameras is you're shooting lots and lots of images, and you're gonna take those and you're gonna stack the best of them to get a finished product. So in that respect, yeah, there's a kissing cousin similarity to DSO work, but in the case of planetary images, I sometimes stack 6 and 8 or 12,000 images. Okay. Now those programs that I talked to you about, AutoStacker 2 and Registacks, will help you automatically pick the best images, sort them out, throw the garbage out, and just leave you with the best images to stack. That's their advantage. It's amazing their freeware. Because I suspect if you have to pay for it, it'll cost you a couple $100. Certainly.
I seem to be the one that keeps on asking the Mac questions. Obviously, Mac might not have the USB 2. Is it like a FireWire plug-in?
Yes, a lot of these do FireWire. Point break cameras, for instance, are very popular. A lot of them come with FireWire. A lot of the image source cameras come with FireWire. The Joe cameras, the red ones. And I've got some gear stuff over here on the side. You're welcome to peruse. I'll try not to eat up all the time here. We can talk about practical stuff. But there are other options other than USB 2, USB 3.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is the type of camera I recommend. It's what I use for all my shooting. I've got a number of image source cameras and also ZW Optics from China sitting over there, and I'll show you some of those. but we'll talk about some benefits of these here shortly, okay? So, you know, what are the advantages? They're easy to use. They're really plug and play. They come with their own software. They're supported. There's a massive user community, particularly online, who can help you answer your questions about these things. They have ripping fast frame rates. I was shooting targets not too long ago at 164 frames per second. In this case, Jupiter. Okay, 164 frames per second for 3 minutes. Do the math. That's a big stack of images that you get to sort through. And remember, you get to sort the garbage out. So if you only keep 10%, you still have thousands of images you're stacking. Okay. Okay. Barlows and power mates live and die by these things. Okay. It doesn't matter whether you prefer tele extenders, where you like Barlow lenses, where you like power mates. They'll all get the job done just so long as they push up the focal length of your system to a point that is both commensurate with the telescope focal length and with the pixel size of the particular camera you have. For instance, the imaging source cameras with the 618 chips have pretty big pixels. Okay, they're I want to say 5.4 or something like that microns. Okay, the SWO cameras with their CMOS sensors, which is a big difference too. People think in CCD or CMOS. Well, CMOS cameras didn't used to really work for planetary imaging. Now they're in the game and they're coming on strong. And those SWO cams have much smaller pixels. Okay, that's finer resolution, but it means that you can't push the power up as much, or your image will be like this in a heartbeat. Okay, so whereas I might use a 2.5 power link with my imaging source cameras, I use a 1.75 or 1.8 Barlow or something similar for the SWO cams, because you got to bring that in a little bit. Okay, but Barlows will need, and if you got particular questions regarding your image, your telescope, I can make some recommendations. Accessories, good finders. You'll want a reticle eyepiece to get things lined up for you. That's kind of a big deal. You want to make sure that you lay your scope properly on your target. A reticle eyepiece is great for centering it because these chips are really, really small. Okay, they're not DSO-sized chips. So you really want to make sure that you've got something that's orthogonal and lined up properly. And a reticle eyepiece will do that. So the way I did it, now you can do that like I do, which is I'll stick the reticle eyepiece in the diagonal, I'll line the system up, whip the thing out, stick my camera in, and away I go. All right. If you like a more leisurely approach to that, or a simpler approach to that, you can use a flip mirror system for it. I got one of those over there you can take a look at. Then all you have to do is put your camera in there, flip it up, line it up, flip it down, and away you go. You're lined up. But there is an extra length added to your focal length when you do that. So sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. If you're shooting Uranus, Neptune, highly recommend it. Those are tough little targets to pick up in the first place and keep in place. You also want some form of duty control because, of course, you're sticking up in the air, and that's going to make a difference to you. I like centering adapters as well. I got a couple examples of those. I got a Glauder, one that come from Howie Glauder, and I've got another one with Lion Cells. It's a centering adapter. Does a real good job of making sure that everything's orthogonal, completely lined up where it needs to be. Just highly recommend. Laptops, peripherals, you can't do this without a computer, really, because you got to send your data somewhere. And you're going to get a lot of data. Remember, we're talking, if we're shooting 30, 60, 150 frames per second, that's going to add up fast. And that's going to end up in storage, okay? What I normally do, the way I limit my images, is I limit them by file size. My standard Jupiter sound file size is 3.2 gigs. Okay? So I'll go through terabytes of storage. I'm always looking for cheap, terabyte hard drives at Micro Center and other places like that. And I'll buy a couple of them when they're on sale. And you will use storage space if you want to keep everything that you do. The nice thing about this is, it's a bad night, throw it away. Just start it tomorrow. Don't worry about it. But I keep thumb drives around for quick storage transfers. I keep external hard drives around. I don't keep stuff in my laptop only long enough to transfer it so I can process it. I process most of my stuff on my desktop unit. So laptop's really an acquisition tool. Now, if that's what you have to work with, that's fine. But for storage, once you're finished doing what you're going to do on the laptop, I recommend you shunt that off just to a hard drive or cut it to a disk. Now, bear in mind, if you got a 3.2 gig file, how many images are you going to fit on one DVD? Really, you're going to get about 180i, whatever the products are going to call. But that's not a bad way to do business, and I recommend archiving like that, especially for your best data. You want to keep that stuff because you never know when you're going to get another perfect night, right? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about atmospheric conditions. What's really important when you're shooting, okay? Light pollution is not really a big factor for us. If you live someplace that's bright enough to blot out Jupiter, then I'm sorry. Couldn't do that. But where most of us live, light pollution is not so severe you can't do this type of imaging. So the real deal is atmospheric seeing conditions. What is seeing? Seeing is the steadiness of the air. Because what we're doing with these high-speed cameras is we are kind of shooting in between the fluctuations in the atmosphere. You know, the atmosphere ripples, it moves. I got some imagery to show, I got some video to show you that. Folks aren't quite locking on to what I'm saying. But as that atmosphere moves and ripples and changes, you'll have fleeting instances of good seeing. Bang, it'll be there, and then it's gone. It's there, and it's gone. Okay, your camera is catching those instances of good seeing, so that when we stack them, when we process this, we're going to throw out the garbage, and we're going to only keep those ones that were shot during the best instances of seeing. Okay? So that's why the frame rates are important. Now, some folks advocate longer exposures and fewer frames per second. If you live in Mobile, Alabama, down on the Gulf Coast, someplace where the air is dead calm much of the year, you can get away with that. Up here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and most places I've lived, including Georgia and Tennessee, it doesn't work that way. You really want the frame rates to help you out. So this image up here was shot on one of those mornings of amazing seeing. And one of the things that was amazing about it is I almost didn't get out of bed because it was misty and nasty, and then you could see water vapor hanging in the air. But I said, yeah, okay. So I went out, rolled the roof off, set up, and sure enough, it was dead calm. Fog, or predictions of fog, are one of the indicators that you could very well have excellent local seeing conditions. Fog doesn't form up when there's a breeze, when there's a lot of atmospheric movement. That's what fog does. So if you get in before it starts, sometimes you can get your best imaging nights of the year that way. I'm glad I pulled myself out of bed for this morning, because that was one of those days. Okay? You never know when you're going to get that. Okay? So, we just talked about atmospheric scenes a little bit. Skip that. Oh, wait a second. Important thing, bottom of the page. Axiom. Good images start with good data. Okay? The corollary to that. Good data starts with good seeing. Be looking for those conditions where you live. If you keep a log, and not everybody does keep a log, I've been trying to do this. I'm really bad at it, but I'm getting better. I'll jot down the weather conditions on the day when I'm imaging, so I can see in the future where there are patterns, and I'll know when I'm most likely to get opportunities for good imaging. Might be worth a try right here. Okay. Everybody knows the clear sky charts, which are, like I said, not kind of a useful estimate. Sometimes they're spot on, but the guys living in Canada is predicting our weather. Okay. Our local guys can't predict our weather in Virginia, so the odds of always being right are pretty remote. But this image, this particular chart that I chose for the Leesburg, Virginia area is right most of the nights in the winter. When you look up here and it's beautiful, no cloud cover, transparency, but the seeing is horrendous. That's because we get a lot of atmospheric turbulence in the winter, and the jet stream comes to visit us in Northern Virginia. We're stressing regularity at that time of year. So it messes up the seeing conditions. When the seeing's bad, there's no point in doing this. Find something else to do that night. Now, the jet stream predictive charts are actually pretty accurate, and I kind of live and die by these when it comes to planning sessions over the course of 3 or 4 or 5 days. These will help you out. I've got a couple of links on the bottom here. The reason this this presentation is set up like this, by the way, is I'm working up a website, and this is what I plan to launch it with, is this particular thing. When that goes out, I'll send out a general hurrah to people who are interested. And I want to start using this as a running dialogue on planetary imaging. But there'll be a lot of resources and stuff connected, including things like links to jet stream charts and weather and that kind of stuff. Okay, so weather in your region is going to be highly variable and localized. In fact, it can change from one town to the next. In Florida, as a kid, I remember it raining on one side of the street and being dry and sunny on the other side of the street sometimes. Weather can be that localized. So you got to stay on top of it, use your local sites, and see what the Doppler radar is showing for you. Microclimate is another issue when it comes to seeing. Microclimate is what happens where you're standing right now, okay? Because whether you're standing at the end of the field here or on the tarmac, in the parking lot, right outside of this building, you've got different seeing conditions in those two locations. Heat rising off the tarmac is going to change things. It's going to stay that way longer at night than it will if you're on a grass field or an area like that. You know, look out with water, you know, with the presence of water or buildings around your viewing site, that's going to make a difference. So you kind of get a feel for what your local conditions are like and what will and won't work for you. But just know that taking a little extra effort sometimes and setting up, you know, 100 yards further than you normally would might make all the difference in the world, having usable seeing or having none at all. So there's all kinds of different ways to grade seeing. The Pickering scale on the left, I keep seeing people write about that, and that's awesome if you happen to have a 5-inch refractor, because that's what the Pickering scale was designed for. It doesn't work so well with other systems. Now, Damien Peach, on the other hand, who's one of the world-renowned planetary imaging gurus, has his own little scale, and I recommend going to his site and checking that out. He's got a lot of good information on there. Mr. Peach, they even come down to, I think he was at the Peach State Star Party last year or something. So the guy travels, and he's willing to share what he knows. Bottom line is, you're really going to have to kind of figure out what your best local seeing conditions are and what is and isn't going to work for you. Everybody's going to have something a little different. It's going to be based on your scope. It's going to be based on where the houses and trees are in your neighborhood. It's going to be based on, of course, your local weather. I don't worry that much about imaging scales, to tell you the truth. Because I don't find that they always tell us what's going on. So I've got a simpler way to do this. All right? I got smiley conditions and I got frowning conditions. What is a good imaging condition? Well, let's look here. Right? Okay, this is Jupiter on a sultry summer night in August of 2010. If you see this when you fire up, you are in for a good night of imaging. Okay? You see the detail popping in and out of the belts here. You can see the well on the Great Rift spot down here. You can see a lot of detail shifting in and out here. And there's not a lot of rippling. It's not going in and out of focus. That is a good, in fact, that's an excellent viewing state. Okay?
Is that the little red spot there to the lower left of the Great Red spot? See, if you go left from that, right there, is that the little red spot?
Now that's that big cloud. That was one of those cloud areas. You get the ovals. You can pick up the ovals on here.
Oh, okay.
You see, look right here. Yeah. So what constitutes bad conditions, which are unfortunately a lot more common? Okay. No. All right. You get this, it's time to go to Plan B. Now that might be DSO observing, we're not going to split doubles tonight. Yeah, that's not happening. Good book, movie, popcorn, whatever, but you're not going to do much useful planetary imaging. So if you get out there and it looks like this, it's just really, you are not going to get, there's no way you can create a good finished product from bad data. It just will not happen. Doesn't matter how much you tweak it, okay? Get this in your mind. You see this? kind of right. Any questions on this so far?
Did you just not have one of Jupiter to put it up?
Yeah, I guess, because I've shown a little bit of everything. But, oh yeah, I've got plenty of those like Jupiter, where literally you can't see all the belts. You can't, you know, when it's like that, it's just not a good thing. I do have examples of that. So again, if folks would like to see, I've got tons of data here and all the time in the world for the next 2 days. So please feel free. I'll pull it up for you. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. All right, so you got your mount, got your OTA, paid attention to the weather, you're ready to saddle up here. So what am I going to do? Level the mount, polar line if you got a gem, power it up, balance it, make sure everything's good. Got your dew strips, got your hair dryer, whatever you're using, you're ready to go. Camera's in place, all your cords are up, got your power focuser. Pretty good power focuser, right? Well, maybe one time. What you cannot get away with, regardless of what your mount and your tube bar is, you got to set up an imaging track. You got to have a camera, and you got to connect that camera to your telescope. And all those little fidgety bits that come together to do that are called your imaging track. So this comprises the extenders, the adapters, all those power mates, you know, all the little stuff that you got to hook together to put things together. Now, the upper right-hand picture is a typical imaging train for a refractor. Notice there's two extension tubes. There's an extension tube in front of the Barlow right here. It's sitting inside of one of those centering adapters, and then there's the Barlow here, and then it's all hooked into the camera. Okay, I have that extender in that refractor to come to focus, and you're going to find that that's going to vary by camera. Refractors almost always require an extension to bring these planetary cameras to focus. Now that shot on the bottom is a different setup. That uses a flip mirror. You see there's a reticle eyepiece with an illuminator on it sitting to the top. Okay, there's a power mate screwed into the front of it, and here's the camera piped into the back. So when you're centering your target, you flip it to the mirror. You look down here, you line it up, you flip that down, and you're centered. There's no messing around with diagonals and all that stuff, and you can shoot right like that. That's not a bad way to do business, but if you are going to do that, I recommend that you use the threads that come with these things and the adapters, and you screw all this stuff together. Because the more rigid your train is, the less flex you're in there, the better results you can get. Sir?
Does the mirror act as an extender also?
No, I mean, it's literally acting as a diagonal. That hole, it's out of the way when you image. That mirror is not there. Okay, it's literally dropped drops out of the way. Okay, and then you have a straight shot. So the light comes in here and goes up to align it, drops down, and then the light goes straight through like that.
But it still moves the camera back 2 inches or 3 inches.
It does. So there's a noticeable little difference there. Okay. Any questions on this? I've got everything you need to put one together over here too. So if anybody wants to talk about that, we can mess with some of the gear. Work table, just stay organized, keep it steady, and you know, don't get too much stuff on there. The only thing that I can unequivocally recommend is don't set an open drink on your work table. That's from experience. So how do you make things easier on here? There's a lot of moving parts, at least it seems that way. So establish a routine. If possible, set it before it gets dark outside. You only take out what you need. Set it on your table. There's your laptop. There's your Barlow. Nice thing about this is you only need a handful of gear to do this. You can leave the eyepiece boxes and everything else at home, but all you need is the camera, the Barlow or power mate. You know, you need a way to plug it into your telescope, and you plug it into your laptop, and away you go. That's it. Doesn't take a whole lot to set this up. Keep everything where it is assigned place, though. That's part of the routine. Lay it out so it's easy you can get to it. Look for cables and cords, because you just know how that is, snagging that stuff in the dark. There's nothing worse than being in the middle of the first triple shadow transit in 20 years, you know, on Jupiter, and then ripping your cord out. Camera going down. And I do recommend keeping a log, because I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel every 6 months. You know, if you're down for a couple of 3 months, don't get the energy go out, try to remember what's what. Notes are a good thing. Highly recommend it. And granted, that bullet at the bottom, keep drinks away from your work table in the dark. Now, capturing images, pretty straightforward, because the camera that you get is going to have software, acquisition software available for it. For instance, with the ZWO cams, they have linked up with the guy who does fire capture over in the EU. The amateur is providing this brilliant capture software for free. And so they've optimized their cameras to use his fire capture software. But there's a whole bunch of different things that you can use, because when you get that ZWO cam, you get fire capture, and you also get something called Sharp Cap, which is a different acquisition software. When you buy an imaging source camera, you're going to get something called IC Capture. It's free. It's proprietary. Imaging source owns it. But again, our buddy who's doing fire capture has incorporated the fixes necessary for to use imaging source cameras with fire capture. Fire capture is starting to sound like an ad. It's the best. It's just the best program out there across the board. It's got more features. It allows you to manipulate the data more, and it just gives you a whole lot more options than the other acquisition software. I know it's Windows for sure, and I'm not sure if it works on Mac yet. I know that was part of the project, but I don't know if he's got that there. We can look that up. That's easy enough to find out. Okay. For you Mac users, yeah, there are other programs out there that will work with Macs.
Well, I have access to both, and it's just a matter of what to go with. I'm really a Mac person, but if you have to go PC, then you just do it.
Yeah, understood.
Just a real quick question. To aid in your focusing, okay, in case you don't have an automatic focus, you could be doing it manually. Can you connect these cameras to a small video monitor that's right below your scope to go ahead and get your focusing done, and then just switch the thing to your computer?
Oh, we'll go you one better. You're using fire capture, okay, let's say. It's up on your laptop. You plug the camera in, the feed's going, you're getting a live feed on your laptop. You can sit there and focus from that. I do that in my refractors all the time.
Yeah, but if the laptop is farther away, sit up. I hear what you're saying.
Oh, you know, I don't know. I've never done it that way. I haven't tried it that way. I don't see why you couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted
Split the signal. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you're getting the live feed directly from the camera, just plugging into the monitor.
Yeah. But one of the reasons I do recommend, one of the reasons I recommend power focusing is during the course of an imaging session, you're going to be focusing and changing. You're going to change it all the time because the conditions will constantly be shifting, and you'll want to be messing around with things. So I refocus after every second or third AVI.
Yeah, the other thing I'm thinking about is grandkids.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so for
Gotcha.
people standing around here, you can be entertaining people while you're actually doing some of this stuff.
That's a cool idea. Sure, I good point. Good solution to that. I don't see why you couldn't do that. Yeah. Okay. So you use the proprietary software that's out there to help you get your data. Right? Then you're going to have to process that file once it's in your computer. Again, I'm going to suggest that when your session's over, just take this stuff. If you're going to process it in your laptop, go ahead and do it. What you need to do, then archive it somewhere, either an external hard drive or someplace else, because you're going to fill up your laptop fast. I don't know, maybe if you got a 1 terabyte drive or a 500 gig drive on there, you'll be good for a few sessions. You're still going to fill up your laptop fast. I know because I do it all the time. I'm constantly moving data off there. Okay. When you come to processing, now the image shut that we have up here is from Registax. In this case, that's Registax 5.1. Very good program. Again, it's freeware, and there's a pretty good sized user community to help you sort things out. But the main takeaway on the processing side is that these stacking programs are going to sort your images. They're going to help you grade them by quality, and then they're gonna rack and stack them from best to worst, and you get to choose a percentage or number or whatever value you choose to decide what you're gonna do, what you're gonna put in your final stack. Now, you then hit the go button once you set the parameters up, and these things will stack them for you. And in a minute or two, they'll give you a finished image. It can come out pan sharpened. They can do all kinds of things before you ever get it for post-processing. Typically, I like to get a sharp image and a raw image. So I'll get a raw stack, and that way I can manipulate it, do whatever I want to with it in other post-processing software. But all those steps you see over here on the right-hand side, it's all done in the software. And it's going to do most of the hard, heavy lifting for you.
Do you use any lossless compression in the same design?
All these files I believe come across completely. Yeah, they come across that. So yeah, if you have options, you've got a range of options there. So if you don't want to do that for some reason, you could. But no, I prefer lossless files, set aside, small as possible. But each one of these algorithms is going to be a little bit different. Now, the shot you have up here is we're in the post-processing phase. You see that image on the top? That's what I got out of my stack. All right? Doesn't look real good, does it? It's not as sharp as you might like. All right? I finished my post-processing, and the image on the bottom is what I ended up with. That was taken with a 4-inch refractor. Okay? Don't worry about how big the scope is. You can get good images of Jupiter, the Moon, Saturn with fairly small aperture. It's not going to have all the resolution, the whistles and bells detail. You're going to get bigger scopes. But I don't think that's a bad Jupiter right there, especially not coming off a 4-inch refractor. Sir?
Is the top picture one of the pictures that was used to get the bottom? It's not when we toss it out?
That is the stack that came when I put my video run into the program AutoStacker, sorted out the worst range, kept the best, and stacked the best and processed it for me. That top image is what came out of that step. Okay, so I didn't.
Bottom's process.
That's the stacking tool process stack. So I then took that stack, I put it in PSCS4 and cleaned it up a lot. Okay, but all that detail is there. You don't get to make detail. You can't create it. There's still people out there, and you hear this on the net all the time, drives me crazy. It's like, well, what is this picture? What does it represent? And say, well, it represents data that you've collected. That's why scientists use amateur lunar and planetary images for like real work, because it's real data that's quantifiable, qualifiable. You can go back to the source, you can pull all the metadata you need to understand how it was acquired. There's no magic involved in this, okay? So that is a good, honest image of Jupiter at that instant in time, you know, as I was getting ready to, like coming right on the edge. Now, that's an important point. You know, you notice with larger apertures, you'll pick up more color off the Jupiter moons. In smaller apertures, you're not getting that saturated color. And that's the one thing you do lose with smaller scopes, is the colors are not as rich. So you don't get, for instance, the blues, the deep blues that you might get off of a bigger scope. But still, it's a pretty doggone good representation. So the whole process, you shoot an image, you bring it in, you stack it, you put it in your post-processor, and away you go. And then you can mess with it all you want in post-processing, just like you can with DSS. There's curves and contrast adjustments, exposure. You can change the hue, the vibrancy, the saturation at any color, at any level that you want, and sharpen it in any number of ways. There's a lot of tools that you can use to clean up your planetary images. And then, of course, you save it off, and you're ready to go. So, in this session, let's quick review. What do we learn? Okay, this can be a lot less expensive than other types of astrophotography. A very small initial investment. And the way I like to put it to people is, you want an ethos, Delos, high-end negatives, okay. You can get into this for significantly less than the cost of a 17mm ethos. Significantly less, like half the price. Okay, so it doesn't have to be expensive. You can do this stuff in your backyard, it works just fine. You probably can use the scope that you already own. Okay? Tracking requirements are not remotely as severe for Lunar and Planetary as they are for DSOs. All right, because you can watch it, you can adjust as you're going, and all you got to do is keep it in the box, keep the planet, the target in the box until you're done imaging, and away you go. Okay, long focal lengths are a benefit. Okay, and if you got to use a power mate or a blower or something to jack them up, that's not a problem either. Pre and post processing, you can do them for free if you want. That's not a problem. There are tools out there that you can do that. If you want to spend more, then you can get tools that are more discreet and provide you fine degree of control. Good images start with good data, and seeing is the key. Garbage in, garbage out. If you see what you saw on that Lunar video with that ribbon all over the place, don't even bother. You're not going to get a good image out of it. Although the new cameras can almost make that happen. They shoot so fast that they can actually bring you home something. But I might shoot 10, 12,000 frames and only have 600 or 800 to stack. So sometimes you can pull something out of those conditions, just not in general. Make sure your gear's in good order, keep organized, and keep it tidy out there at the table, and your gear will work for you. Don't be afraid to experiment. There's some folks who insist that you must follow, the Nyquist formula for pixel size and yada, yada, yada. Okay, you guys got guys like Danny Peach out there who are imaging at extreme focal lengths, like f50. All right, and folks say, well, you're not getting any extra detail out of that. No, but you got an image that's actually easier to work with. It's easier to see the detail. In water-dependent cases, it's easier to pull focus on it. And then, size sometimes is beneficial, even if you're not getting additional resolution. You downsize the imaging processing, it doesn't make any difference. All right? So don't be afraid to try new approaches. Don't worry about what other folks say. Just go out there and give it a go and see how it works for you. I often, in fact, that one shot. Let's go back to that one. That image was acquired with a 100mm refractor, which was f9, and I used a 5x power length. So it was shooting at f45 when I did that. I don't see anything wrong with that image. A lot of detail on that. And yeah, I just scaled the image. But no, that's about it. Keep a log, be patient, have fun with it, and exchange notes. And if y'all want to talk about any of this, please let's do it. Sure.
Question about using, since I have a DSLR with video capability, how does that work? Obviously.
Wow. There's a whole bunch of folks out there doing. There's a ton of discussion on the net. I haven't done it that way. I got Canon Rebel. I could do it that way, but I don't because I use dedicated imagers. I found that it's a more difficult way to do captures, but there are people doing good work out there. I'm afraid I just can't give you a whole lot of insight into it.
When you say more difficult, in what respect are you talking about?
Kind of hard for us to qualify that. Basically, the camera's not made for high-speed, multiple imaging.
Right.
Okay, so getting your settings right, all right, and just staying on top of the data, because a lot of people do it off of the live view, because that's what you have to work with, right? And that's just a hard way to keep track of it and focus in on the detail to keep it properly focused and that sort of thing.
That's why my question about the live feed out of it going into a bigger little monitor.
It might well work, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, couldn't tell you that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. John?
I got one of those imaging source cameras, and I guess it's been about 3 or 4 years ago, and I got a refractor, about 1,000mm focal length. I put it in the refractor and got Jupiter, but the image on the screen was so tiny, I couldn't hardly make it out. And I was like, so I did just a couple of screen captures, and I was like, well, this isn't working, so I kind of gave it up. I didn't realize you had to use a bar mode in front of it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, that little refractor we were shooting at 500 millimeters. So, yeah, we'll push it out. And that's not uncommon. Put a 2.5x Barlow in a C11 at f10, that's a lot of focal length. A lot of focal length. Which is why the fidgety part of this game is lining your target up on the chip and keeping it there. Once you get used to it, it's really not that big a deal.
Well, a friend of mine who's been doing this for a long time for webcam, he has a 10-inch f12 Newtonian that he does a lot of planetary with, and the image on the screen of Jupiter is like this big.
Yeah.
And the detail on it is so impressive. And here I have a little dot, and I was like, all right, maybe this isn't for me, you know?
I do the same thing. Well, that's the kind of funny thing that folks say, well, you're imaging, don't you ever observe? Well, yeah, the whole time it's on the screen, you're getting all that detail piped to you live as this is imaging. So that's pretty good.
I mean, the image he had, just the raw image on the screen, was far more impressive than anything I've seen in the 90s.
Yeah.
As far as the amount of detail is.
I agree with you, John, and I do that all the time. I'll sit down and watch that. I'll watch Jupiter for hours.
There's a lot of discussion about the GoPro series of cameras. Do they have any application here?
GoPro. Not familiar with them.
Those are the sport ones, like Garmin has them also. I use one for bicycling and stuff like that. It's the same thing as a webcam.
It's a webcam.
So, yeah.
It's a webcam. You'd have to put, first of all, a 125 adapter on the front of it. You need to get an IR filter for it, UV IR cut filter for it. And really, it's more trouble than it's worth.
Okay.
With respect to the illuminated eyepiece that you're using, obviously the crosshair, but I guess they have ones available that are boxes in the center for, as if it's the chip. Do you recommend, which one do you use?
Yeah, actually, the one I use most is my Meade 12 meter astrometric eyepiece, which has graduated scales for doing double star work and other stuff. And it's got a dead center. It's got a circle, and that's what I use for practically everything, including occasionally astrometric work. But yeah, anything that's got something fixed in the center that will allow you to line it up dead center is what you're looking for. One I'm not so fond of, but I still find myself using it. Celestron just came out with one that's got a double lined reticle. And it's just like so bright it blinds you. But it does get the job done. That Orion 20 millimeter one works pretty well too.
Hey, Brian.
Sorry?
Can you recap just a minute your focusing process? You said you used a motorized focuser for it, and have you used a band-on mask or any kind of mask like that? Or you just work off the image itself?
No, I don't. In fact, I'm going to pull, while we're talking about this, and answer a couple of questions. I'm going to pull something up here. I always image on my target. And the reason I always image,
You always focus on your target?
and most folks I know who do this do. I don't know of any lunar planetary imagers really, folks who've been around who use a mask or something similar. You pick a feature out, whether it's a demarcation line between one of the belts on Jupiter, the Cassini division in Saturn, edge or gross features on Mars. Okay, because if you can't hold good focus on those, it's probably not a particularly good night for planetary imaging. Okay, and you might struggle with that for 10 or 15 minutes, and it's worth 10 or 15 minutes to get your focus right on this. But once you're in the zone, it makes a big difference. And I couldn't do that with a star, and then slew back to my target, that tiny little chip, and play that game. So I always focus on the target.
So you generally then just so I get a picture of what you do, you're looking at a live view of the target.
Mm-hmm.
You mechanically or use the motor and move the focus back and forth until it looks visually right on the screen on live feedback.
Yes, and yeah, because your monitor is giving you a de facto live feed to work with. And it's a big image on your monitor. When you pull one of these software programs up, you got a box this size, and with that, one of those ZWO cams in my C11, Jupiter almost fills that box on this monitor. It's huge. And that's another reason that I advocate, doing that focusing on the screen live that way, on the planet that you're, the target you're actually going to use. It really is easier once you get used to it.
Thanks.
Well, anyone else there? Got any other questions? I think I have one thing I wanted to show.
No question.
Sir?
Once you get the focus set up, so if you go in, so the problems I have is, with my automatic also, is getting the distance on the imaging frame. For repeatability, one of the things I'm thinking is, I can actually measure, when I get the rough focus, I can measure those certain collars on the, inch and a quarter barrel.
Right.
So that, if I get my focus length right, I can slap it right on and be in the ballpark, then it's my focus. Is that how you do it? With deep space observing, I was trying to focus last night, I'm new with this, right? So I was trying to focus last night, and I slapped my camera on the back, my Nikon, and I'm looking at the image, and it was just so difficult to get a strength point.
Yeah, I actually, all my focusers, well, not all of them, but several of my focusers have graduated cylinders on them. So I'll just note where it's at with a specific camera setup. And it's, 51 mils, and I can go to that. So that's probably, I'm not
So
sure.
in SCT, I can lock my mirrors, optical focus, and then go to their camera scale.
Yeah, I popped this one, I wanted to pop this one up here because this is the train I do in my observatory. This is the C11, and here I've got a Feather Touch 2015 VCR on there, micro touch motor on the side. This is set up for mono imaging. So there's a power mate here in front of the filter wheel, and then the camera's on the back. But these are all screwed together. There's no extra tubes, no screws, no fidgeting with that. The camera is screwed into the filter wheel, and the power mate is screwed into the front of that. So it's all one rigid unit. And that, with refractors, is a big deal. So if you have to use an extension, you probably need an extension tube. Okay? But we can talk offline about that. Okay? Because I'm going to be doing the same thing tonight. You don't need that with SCTs. They got a ton of power for us. So refractors will look different now. Okay? Oh my goodness. Any other questions? It's been a good discussion. Thank you so much. 45 minutes of concrete.
That's the thing, next time we get on, you meet everybody, do voice.
You use one tube
Fantastic,
extension,
I love those.
I'm the guy that this group couldn't find what he was looking for.
collateral.
Because they were just removed, goes, what you looking
Isn't
at?
great for line of
Sounds like a connectivity. The planetary.
It's got a collar in there.
Kind of hard to check it without that.
So basically, then, more exactly using after
Yep. Yeah, because, because those are all the better ones, right?
Hey, Jim.
And,
you know,
that's
That's right, exactly.
So, the centering.
Next one's gonna go back page before the next one.
Which has one screw on the side, still, sliders the way flat machine. So, those are worth a 35 or 50 bucks, you know.
Well, usually his wife is right there at the registration.
Oh,
yeah,
That's not
okay.
mentioned investment.
I'm sure she was in.
Make sure you're stuck.
Yeah, he came to Smith and
These are the, you know, the